Okay, so today I'm going to be doing a preventative maintenance here at the Conroe location. So I'm going to be going step by step, showing what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, for anybody who needs help or doesn't know how to do PM or just starting off. Okay. So starting off, I'm going to go over what I bring with me on the PM, so that way you have all your materials ready. In my car, as though it's dirty. I have tons of parts and everything. I always keep extra of everything in the car, just so that way if there's a treadmill that's down while I'm here, I can get it back up, so that way whenever the club opens up in the morning, the treadmill, if it is down, can be repaired. Then I've got all my tools with me as if I was doing a repair. So I've got all my drills, I've got my lights, got everything in there, my little tool bag, plenty of treadmill lube. I'll bring 2 long hoses. Usually one's good enough, but every club is shaped differently, so you don't want to have not enough hose, and then you have to move a bunch of rowers out of the way in order to fill them back up or drain them. And that's off if you're doing a water rower month. So typically, at least in my area, we're doing water changes once a quarter. So this month we're doing water changes, and you can reference to the water change video that I also have up. So that'll be a separate video, but this month we are doing the water changes in these. So I'll bring the 2 hoses. I'll bring the short hose for the suction side, the long hose for dumping out and filling up. I've got my various valves and connections that I have in order to make things easier on myself. An extension cord, obviously the pump. I'll bring some spray lubricant and some white lithium grease. I've got my shop vac, but this is just the blower attachment to the shop vac. So I'll use that to blow all the dust out of the treadmill. Typically they want you to vacuum out the treadmill, but vacuuming just doesn't get all the cracks and crevices, so I'll take this blower and then I'll blow all the dust out, move the treadmills, and then vacuum it up off the floor. It's much easier and that gets the treadmills 10 times cleaner. I'll have this dolly here just for making moving the treadmills easier, because it's hard on your back if you're going to be doing all these treadmills, moving them back and forth. So the dolly just gives you some leverage, makes things easier. I'll have my toolbox with all my tools, and then I'll have a towel. And then usually I have a yardstick to help push the towel underneath the treadmill belts to clean underneath the belts, but unfortunately I broke mine, so I'll be using a broomstick today. So that's kind of the gist of what you're going to need. You'll also need your phone or tablet or laptop or whatever it is you take your notes on. And then that should be it. And then I'll start getting this PM started. Okay, so I either do this first or last. Just kind of depends on what I'm doing. But we will need the belt distance, the total distance, and the total time on all the treadmills. So we'll go into maintenance mode. And how to go into maintenance mode is you'll push and hold the stop button. It's hard to do it with one hand. I'm holding the camera here, but you'll push and hold the stop button, remove the safety key, and replace the safety key, then release the stop button. And then you'll end up in maintenance mode. And then from there, you'll push the stop button to scroll through to get to your numbers. And so you'll scroll through, get your belt distance, and total time. And you'll do that for all the treadmills, so you can document that on all of your PMs. And you'll also do that for every single repair. Anytime you're at a repair, you're going to need all of the numbers for that treadmill. So just get used to doing those. Okay, after I'm done with the numbers, the next thing I'm going to do is make sure that there's enough room in the front of the treadmills for me to go around in the front to start removing all the hood covers. Depending again on the landscape of your club, some clubs everything's very tight and there's no space in the front and they're up against the wall. If they are, then scoot them all back with the dolly. If there's enough space, then I go ahead and start removing the covers. Since it's low and you're going to be doing this for a while, you don't want to be hurting your back, so before I start removing all the covers, I go down the line and I incline all the treadmills up to 15. Once they're all the way up, I'll pull all the safety switches. That way they're stuck up and they don't go back down on me. And that way it's just less bending over and less harm on my back. It's worth taking that extra 2 minutes to raise them all up, just so that way there's less bending over. While all the treadmills are inclining, just listen to the treadmills, listen to the incline motor, listen to the lift arm bearings and bushings. If there's any kind of clicking or popping, or it sounds like the motor's working too hard, just document what's going on. So if the motor's working too hard, we might want to replace the lift motor. If the bushings are making a whole lot of noise, then we'll want to replace or lubricate those bushings. And then the feet, same thing for those. If the feet are all rusted and seized, and so whenever they go up and down making a whole bunch of noise, we'll replace those and or lubricate. So just keep those things in mind anytime you're doing anything on the treadmill. The big thing is just listening for sounds. So if there's a sound that it shouldn't be making, we just need to fix it and replace the parts in order to make the sound go away. While other treadmills are inclining, just listen to the treadmills, listen to the incline motor, listen to the lift arm bearings and bushings. If there's any kind of clicking or popping, or it sounds like the motor's working too hard, just document what's going on. So if the motor's working too hard, we might want to replace the lift motor. If the bushings are making a whole lot of noise, then we'll want to replace or lubricate those bushings. And then the feet, same thing for those. If the feet are all rusted and seized, and so whenever they go up and down making a whole bunch of noise, we'll replace those and or lubricate. So just keep those things in mind anytime you're doing anything on the treadmill. The big thing is just listening for sounds. So if there's a sound that it shouldn't be making, we just need to fix it and replace the parts in order to make the sound go away. Okay, so removing these the hood covers, they'll be on the newer locations. There's going to be 3/16 bolts here and here. On the older style, they'll be here and here, and then we'll also have one on each side. The newer style ones, they don't have. And then again, everything depends on your location, on how much space you have. So lots of times, lots of locations, they're so close together, you don't have room to get an Allen key in there, or especially your gun if you're trying to save on time. So some of them, there's just enough room if you get one of these little 90-degree tools, and then you can put that on your gun. It saves you some space. That way you can get... saves you some space so where you can get to the sides, and that's if you're at a location where there's minimal space. If they're still so close that won't work, what I'll do is I'll incline every other treadmill, so that way that part is elevated. I'll take those hood covers off, and then I'll put those down, incline the ones that I didn't, and get them off that way. So everything kind of dictates how much space you have in your club, but that's what I'll do if they're either barely too close or if they're too close. Either, work with what you got. Okay, so now that we have all the hardware removed from all of them, I'm going to remove the hood covers. So what I found easiest thing to do is to come down the line, I'll lift them up, and then I'll gently slide it down. I know they're inclined, so they should slide down to the end. And I'll go down the line, letting them slide down, so that way I don't have to break my back picking them all up that way. Because it's a lot of more work if you want to come to the front, have to bend all the way down and pick them up and do that one at a time. So I'll go down the line, I'll push them all. Once they've all been pushed, then I'll come down the line, I'll pick them up and get them out of my way so I can do my inspection. That's it. Okay, so now we have all the hood covers removed. So the next basic step is I'm going to go around all the treadmills looking for any visible physical damage. So I'm going to look for cracks on here. I'm going to see if there's any missing hardware. That happens a lot. Or the old style ones, they all rust out, and so you make sure that those are still good. You'll check the feet, make sure the feet are in good shape, that there's still the rubber on the bottom of them. You'll look for, if the old style have the metal post bars here, make sure those are in place. Make sure that the fan pivot's that's in there. Make sure that these aren't pulling off. Make sure that the belts haven't cut into the side rails. So just going around looking for any physical damages, looking at all of them, and then as you go down the line, if you find anything, just annotate it so that way we can order those parts. And then the same thing on the front, we're going to check that power cord first, make sure that they're plugged in all the way, see if there's any damages to the power cord. And then same thing, we're going to check over here at the power receptacle, light, make sure that that's undamaged. Same thing with the power switch there. We're going to look underneath, make sure everything's in good shape, okay? We're going to see that the cotter pin or the retaining pin is in place for the lift motor on top and on the bottom. We're going to ensure that all the plugs are plugged in, there's nothing unplugged, that the ground is put into place, the dump resistor is plugged in, those are all good. Same thing on the Olympus board, so everything's plugged in where it's supposed to be. No cables are pinched or unplugged. We'll go down the line and do that to all of them. So things like this is what we're listening for. So as this is inclining, we're getting a whole lot of noise coming from either from the pin or from the lift bushings. So we're going to move this one out of the way and figure out what's causing all that noise so we can get that taken care of. Because I have the space here at this club, rather than trying to climb in and under and by the side of the treadmill, and I have the space here and I got the time, I'm going to go ahead and turn this treadmill onto its side. That way I can just grease everything up. Okay, so to put the treadmill onto its side, it's really easy. Just make sure it's level. I'll stand onto it, and then I use myself as a kind of counterweight. And I'll lean back. And then here it kind of balances itself out. Just make sure that you let it down nice and easy. Don't slam it. There we go. And now we're on the side. So as the saying goes, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I prefer just to grease all the wheels and be done with it. So all the moving parts for whenever the lift is going that can make the noise is here the pins. So if they're dry, and then if the bushings, so you'll see there's plastic bushings that are supposed to be there and there, which are in place. So if those, well, it's just washers, but if so it could be that metal on metal contact making the noise. It could also be the bushings inside of here. The old style do not have this grease nipple, and you have to take the whole thing apart in order to grease those. But fortunately the new style do, so you can grease those. And then same thing, it could be the feet. This one is a new club, so it still has the straps on here when they installed it. So the feet could also get sweat or rust and stuff in there, and then those will rust, and so that'll all start squeaking. And the same thing up top could be this pin here. So rather than taking the time to figure out what's making the noise, I'm just going to put grease on all of them, and then the sound will be gone. So when greasing these kind of things, we got a couple of different options on how we can do it. So we can go with easy with these spray cans. So I have this gel lubricant spray and stay. It's kind of the thicker version of the WD-40, and then we've got the white lithium grease, and then I've got a grease gun to do these. So obviously the thicker grease that you put on there, the longer it's going to last. So this WD-40's, the thicker WD-40, but it's obviously not going to last as long as this white lithium, and then same as using the grease gun to put grease on those inserts there. So if you're going down the line, it's easy to have all the treadmills inclined all the way up, reach in underneath, and then spray the pin up top, and then come by on the sides with the grease gun and the flexible hose, put those on, and then same thing with the feet, come through with those. Or if you just wanted to do it one time a year, your better bet would be just to, whenever they're doing it, whenever they're making all the noise, put this on there, and then it shouldn't make noise again. As a preventative maintenance for me, anytime I change a lift motor, the treadmill's already on its side, I'll go ahead and then I'll grease these up with the white lithium, and the same thing with the feet, just that way I won't have to worry about it again until the lift motor goes bad, so that way I'm not constantly messing around with lift noises every month at PM. So I'd rather just, as the lift motors go bad, go ahead and grease them while I'm already there. It's already on its side, and it saves me time at PMs. Okay, cool. So both versions, like I said, if it's on there, you can just spray in there with this grease, and then that should do the trick, and it'll spin on there. And I'll show you both ways, just so that way you have your options. That's easy if you're just going down the line, spraying them all, they're all quiet. But what I like to do is, if I'm already here, when I'm doing a lift motor change, I'll go ahead and I'll put the thicker white lithium grease on here, so that way I don't have to worry about doing the WD-40 every month at PM. I just got to worry about it, whenever they're making noises, and it's happening much less frequently. It's better if you put some gloves on when you do this, because it can get kind of messy. Unfortunately, I didn't bring mine with me today, so I'll put the grease on there, and then same thing, I'll put them on here. So it can be a little messy. However, it's going to save you some trouble later whenever you're dealing with all these noises, trying to get them quiet. Good liberal amount of white lithium, and then I'll put it back in place and put it back in turn. We got the white lithium on there, and then just make sure you replace your retaining pin. Make sure that's in place. So now that's loose. All right. So now we'll come and do the feet. The feet, depending on, these feet look good. They're in good condition. However, you see this is loose already, so It should be on there tight. So while we're here, we'll make sure those are tight, and I'll get 3/4 inch wrench and tighten these down. But for the time being, just so that way we can prevent the feet from going bad later, from sweat and stuff going on there, a dab of this white lithium, and it should last for much longer. And then just work it in there. Same thing on the other side, on the bottom. So we'll do that. Turn it off. Okay, so although these do have the grease nipples here, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this when you take these off, just because, you know, half the versions have them, half of them don't, I guess, depending on when these treadmills were made. So you need a 3/4 inch wrench to take off both of these. Okay, you can stop the video. Okay, you can stop the video now. Okay, so once you have the bolts taken out, make sure you keep it all together. It should have the washer on there. And do from both sides, take the bolts and washer off. Alright, so here you can just push the bushing out, and you can see that is what our problem is. This thing is dry as a bone, doesn't want to come out. It should be lubricated well enough for them to just slide on out. If they don't want to come out, you can get a little plastic hammer and your bolt and push it out. Put that on there. There you go. So that is why it was making all that noise. There should be 2 of them in there. 1 and 2. All right, and you can see here that it's got a little damage on it from it being dry, and it wasn't lubricated sufficiently. So we probably need to replace these. So I'm going to request new of these to be on here. But for the meantime, I'm going to lubricate them up, and I'll clean the old junk off here and here, and then I'll clean out the inside. So in case there's like rust or if like sweat got its way in there to get it all corroded, we're just going to clean all the gunk off. Alright, now that they're clean, I will re-lubricate them with this here white lithium. I'll put a liberal amount on there so that way I don't have to worry about doing this again for a while. So that's on there, and I'll slide it in. There we go. Maybe we can squeeze a little bit in there as well. Same thing with the other one. A liberal amount. And again, these ones that have the grease nipples, you can just put your grease gun on there, pump a bunch of grease in there until it comes out the sides. Incline it up and down a few times to work it in, and then it should be good. This is I'm doing it this way with this one, just that way you can see what it's like with the treadmills that don't have the grease nipples. There we go. So on there. I'll put a little bit in these bolts as well in case they start spinning. It shouldn't be necessary, but nonetheless, it's not going to hurt anything. I don't put it on the threads because I don't want those threads getting grease on there too, and the nut's going to come off. I want to unthread. Alright, so that one's ready to go. I'll do the same thing to this one, and then I'll reinstall it, and it's good to go. Okay, so once you have the bolts taken out, make sure you keep it all together. It should have the washer on there. And do from both sides, take the bolts and washer off. Alright, so here you can just push the bushing out, and you can see that is what our problem is. This thing is dry as a bone, doesn't want to come out. It should be lubricated well enough for them to just slide on out. If they don't want to come out, you can get a little plastic hammer and your bolt and push it out. Put that on there. There you go. So that is why it was making all that noise. There should be 2 of them in there. 1 and 2. Alright, and you can see here that it's got a little damage on it from it being dry, and it wasn't lubricated sufficiently. So we probably need to replace these. So I'm going to request new of these to be on here. But for the meantime, I'm going to lubricate them up, and I'll clean the old junk off here and here, and then I'll clean out the inside. So in case there's like rust or if like sweat got its way in there to get it all corroded, we're just going to clean all the gunk off. Alright, now that they're clean, I will re-lubricate them with this here white lithium. I'll put a liberal amount on there so that way I don't have to worry about doing this again for a while. So that's on there, and I'll slide it in. There we go. Maybe we can squeeze a little bit in there as well. Same thing with the other one. A liberal amount. And again, these ones that have the grease nipples, you can just put your grease gun on there, pump a bunch of grease in there until it comes out the sides. Incline it up and down a few times to work it in, and then it should be good. This is I'm doing it this way with this one, just that way you can see what it's like with the treadmills that don't have the grease nipples. There we go. So on there. I'll put a little bit in these bolts as well in case they start spinning. It shouldn't be necessary, but nonetheless, it's not going to hurt anything. I don't put it on the threads because I don't want those threads getting grease on there too, and the nut's going to come off. I want to unthread. Alright, so that one's ready to go. I'll do the same thing to this one, and then I'll reinstall it, and it's good to go. Okay, so now that it's all lubricated, I just pushed the bushings back in there. They've got the white lithium all over them. So now all I got to do is just put it back into place. So I'll just kind of eyeball it where it's at and push until I feel it thread, and then I'll just put 1 or 2 threads on there until I get the other one in place. There we go, and then you'll feel whenever you got it on. So now it's on and in place. Now I just got to use my wrench, screw them back on all the way, and then that's it. So that's it. Okay, so now I've got the bottom pin lubricated and checked for the bushings. I have these bushings lubricated. I'll just use a wipe and just wipe off any excess white lithium, just so that way it's not a mess down here and just attracting dust. Since I've already got it on its side, anytime you have a treadmill open, you already got it there, just go ahead, take a look. If there's excess dust or buildup or dirt, or just if you're already here, go ahead and clean it. That way it's not a question whether you were there or not, and the treadmill's cleaner, and it saves you a heartache later from having to do all of it during PM. So if I was here on a repair to change out the lift motor, I'd swap out the lift motor and I'd go ahead and lubricate these things. That way at PM I'm never having this issue of loud lift motors, and it just saves you a lot of time and effort later. So you're just doing them individually as you're going down the line, instead of having to do this step to every treadmill at a PM. Gets excessive. Okay, cool. And then the last step, and I'm not going to take this one off, I'm just going to spray the lube right in there onto the pins. And this is thick enough, and it just the white lithium wouldn't be necessary there. Whenever I change the lift motor, I'll put white lithium on it. But this gel lubricant, thicker WD-40 is thick enough, so this one in theory should be good. So we'll put it back in place and then test it out. Okay, and then putting the treadmill back, same thing when you took it down. So we're going to lift up, and I'm going to come nice and easy until you feel like the weight feels like it wants to come down. And then from here, I'll just kind of lean back so I can use my body weight. I'll lean on it, and it stands up nice and easy. Just don't slam these treadmills. And okay, so putting the treadmill back into position, I've got my dolly here. All I do is I scoot it up, I push down here, and then I just use a little bit of hip action and just walk it forward, back until it's in line, which is a lot easier than the other method of lifting it up and then it just hurts your back. So that's safer on yourself and easier. So let's go. Then anytime you work on anything, you always want to just double check your work. So I'm just going to incline it up to 15, make sure that it sounds better now. And so far so good. But if it was still making noise, then I'd figure out what it was. But it's good and quiet now, so nothing else to worry about. We can go down the line and work on the rest. These two were also making lift noises. These two I'm going to just do with the WD-40, so that way you see that it works. It'll hold up until next month, and then I can spray them again. And then, then it's just this method, you're going to have to constantly redo it. The other method with that thicker grease, once a year or once every other year, whenever the lift motor goes bad, I do it, and then I'm not going to have any more problems again until the lift motor goes bad. So you can see here, I've got them inclined up. I just come to the front of the treadmill, and I'll just spray there and there, and that'll take care of the pin at least. And I can still do with the grease gun, I can just reach in here from the side and get to the grease nipple right there. So it's a lot easier just doing that with the grease gun rather than pulling it out. So if it's those bushings, that's pretty simple. And if it's this and this, it's pretty simple just to spray this with the gun, at least until you change your lift motor. Then you can do it with the thicker grease and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Cool. So I got my grease gun. So to do the grease nipples, this is a lot easier, this method, than the other one. But again, that's pending if you're at a club that actually has the grease nipples. So if you're at a club that doesn't have them, then you have to do it the old school method of taking it all the way off. If you can get on here so you can see. Right there, I got it hooked on. I got my little flexible hose. And so I'll just pump grease in there until I can see grease coming out of the sides. Yeah, see, grease is coming out now. So take it off, and then do the same thing the other side. Okay, so next we need to clean underneath all the belts, because over time, sweat, dust, junk all gets underneath this belt, and it gets dirty underneath the belt. And over time, it turns to like basically sandpaper underneath, creates more friction, and that gives a treadmill problems. So we need to clean underneath it. Usually I do this with a yardstick. It makes it a lot easier to do it because it's flatter. Mine broke, so in the meantime I'm using this broomstick. Okay. So easiest way to do it, and it works well when you have the yardstick, is I'll have it folded, and then I'll fold it over itself one time. So I got a little bit of cook padding there. I'll put the yardstick or broomstick right there on top, and then I'll push all the way through. And so with that fold, it lets you push all the way through in one push without having to come underneath the other side and dig it out. So that when you did that fold, it lets you push all the way through, lands in the right place the first time. And then I'll stand on it on both sides. And then it is imperative that you do not move your feet until the belt comes to a complete stop. There's been so many times where I've showed someone this, they stood on there until the belt was like slow, and then they got up, the towel got ripped to the bottom and started messing things up. So do not move your feet until the belt comes to a complete stop. So I'll hit start, I'll hit 12, let the belt come up to speed, and that way it'll clean the underside of the belt. Then I'll just stay in here until the treadmill gets up to speed. Once it's up to speed, then I'll hit stop. Alright, good enough. It's up to speed, I'll hit stop, and let it wind down. Complete stop. Then what I'll do is I'll grab the towel on both sides, and then I'll use it to wipe off the board. There we go. And then I'll just move down the line doing that. Same thing. Put my little fold. Got the stick. So the fold didn't work out that well that time, but when it doesn't work out, it's because the yardstick would have made it, because it's flatter. This is just thicker, and you just got to pull it over there. You get a better clean the further to the front you stand, just because there's less slack on the belt at the front, right in front of the roller. So you start, 12 again, same thing. Okay, so all the belts have been cleaned. The lifts have all been lubricated if needed. So now what I want to do is I'm going to check the quality of the belts and see if the belts are damaged or not. Obviously, if they're damaged on the top side, we can visibly see them. We want to make sure that the logos are no more than 50% wore off. So if the logos are good, we don't see any tears or visible damages. Now I want to test the underside of the belt. So the easiest way to do that is I'll just push the belt with my feet. It should be not incredibly difficult to move it. If you come across one where you have to really force or push in order to get it to move, that means there's unnecessary friction on that belt, so something got underneath it, ruined the underside of the belt. So usually when that happens, the club will start complaining of a treadmill shutting down while someone's running on it, because the motor's working harder, it's pulling heavier amps, and so usually that's the cause, is the belt going bad. So that's when we'll just throw extra lube on there to keep it running for the time being until we come back for PM repair, and we'll replace the belt, flip the deck, lubricate all the jacks. So for right now, what I'm doing is I'm just testing to see all of them to make sure that all the belts are in good condition. They've all been cleaned. If I come across one that has, has extra friction on there, like I said, I'll go through, we'll lubricate them, clean them up, and check test to see if there's anything wrong with it. So if you notice here on this one, there's a problem with the motor on this one. Come take a look. So we just found that here. So as the flywheel spins on the motor here, there's a problem with this motor. So we're going to need to replace this motor here. And I can see the motor's been dropped, it looks like, whenever they installed it. Let me take a look. So I can see there's damage on the flywheel there, so it looks like whoever put it in place might have dropped it or something. But either way, this is a brand new club, it's only been open for a little while. So it looks like that is a bad drive motor on treadmill 7. So I'll annotate that, and we'll get that drive motor replaced. So, yep, for sure, bad motor. And then same thing, go down the line, push with your feet. We're feeling for, what we want to look right now, we're just looking for extra friction. And if we feel anything that's rougher than usual, we'll go through, we'll lubricate that up, clean it up again, and keep it in service until we can return for the PM repairs whenever the new belt comes, and then we'll flip the deck. If the deck's been flipped once before, then you need to order a new deck as well, so that way it has that fresh wax coating. Now, after doing that, I'm going to come down the line again. I'm just going to hit start one time. That way I know the fan comes on, and I'm feeling for vibrations on the walking belt. If I feel vibrations on low speed, that usually means that the bearings inside of the rollers are bad, and that's what you're feeling the rubbing of those bearings, and then we'll know that the rollers are bad. Usually you can hear them a little bit better at slower speeds, and you can feel the vibration more on slow speeds. So going down the line, looking and feeling for those. And anytime you're doing this, I mean, that's what we're checking for, but still keep your eyes open for literally anything else that can be wrong. We're looking at the belts for frays and tears. We're looking for hardware that's out of place, cables that are out of place, unusual sounds. That is the bad motor there. All right. So next, we're going to get all the dust and clean all the treadmills. So first thing I do is I incline all of them, so that way I can vacuum underneath them whenever I'm done. And I unplug all of the power cords, so that way when I'm blowing all the dust out, it doesn't cover all the power cords and just make a big old mess. So I get them all inclined up, and I got the power cords off. So then now I'm going to come through with the blower and blow out all the treadmills. Okay, so first thing whenever I start blowing, I'm going to blow off inside of the fan here because this is all hollow, so when the frame comes on, it's going to pull dust out from inside the hood cover, bring it up, and then it starts blowing dust in the member spaces, and that's not desirable. So I want to blow all that dust down or out, and then I can clean it all up. So first I'll blow here, blow all this dust off, then I'll blow all the dust out from over there underneath the motor, and then same thing by here by the roller, and then I'll do like a sweeping motion, getting all the dust out. And then I'm going to go down the line doing the same thing to all of them. Once all the dust is blown out from the inside of the treadmills, and I'm going to walk back, and then I'll blow out from underneath it to push all the dust to the front. And then I'm going to get the dolly, I'm going to scoot all these treadmills back, and then I'm going to vacuum up all the mess that we just got out of the treadmills. So, just like this. And also, as you're going down the line, make sure your power cord stays up here, that way you don't get caught while you're moving them around. So I'm going down the line, doing that to all the treadmills. Some clubs are dustier than others, but if you do this way every month, they'll stay clean. If you try to do it with the vacuum, you're not going to get all the dust out, and then they'll just be dirtier. And then if you skip months, then they're going to be dirty. But this is the best way, for me at least, to clean them. Gets all the dust out of the way, and I'm not sitting here bending over and fighting it to vacuum out every little bit of it. I just blow all the dust out, move the treadmills, vacuum them up. Seems the easiest way, and they get way cleaner. So, okay, after they've all been blown out, then I'm going to scoot the treadmills back so that way I can vacuum in front. The reason why I wait to move them back until after I've blown them out is because if I scoot them back here and then blow them out, then there's a larger area for the dust to be collecting. So if they're all the way forward and I blow it forward, most of the dust will be collecting there at that corner rather than a larger, more spread out area. Also, whenever you're blowing, make sure you turn the fans off, because if you blow all that dust out and the fans running, there's a strong wind in here, and then that dust is going to go everywhere. So turn the fans off so that way the dust is more likely to stay put, and that way you can vacuum it up and get all the mess picked up. That's it. Okay, so after you blow them all and then you vacuum it all, just make sure, because I've got them all lifted up, so you just make sure you get up under there while you're vacuuming. Just get a good job of getting all the dust. You can see how nice and clean they are. There's no dust anywhere, nice and squeaky clean, and then that way it all looks nice and pretty. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to test all these drive belts. Basically all I got to do is just look at them, which I should have done earlier whenever we looked at the walking belts. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit start on all the treadmills, and then I'm going to send it up to the speed, set it up to 12, and then I'm going to be listening for the squeaky drive bell. Whenever you hear it for the first time, it's the same every time. So if you hear them doing all this screeching, then we'll just document those drive belts as bad and then replace them. So at the same time, since I'm already going to be here, they're already going to be running, I'll have the 732 in my hand, so that way I can adjust the walking belts in case they're unaligned. So as I'm going down, I'm looking at these as well and seeing if they're too far to one side or the other. That way I can adjust them, so that way they'll be centered. Okay, so we do have one bad drive belt here, and so we'll just document that one as being bad, and then we'll replace it at the PM repair. Okay, so I forgot to show you whenever we were pulling up everything on maintenance mode for the numbers. But we're going to calibrate incline. You just push and hold stop, remove the magnet, and replace the magnet. So now we're in maintenance mode. I'm going to hit stop one time. I'm just going to say press incline up or down to calibrate incline. So I'm going to hit it. And so now it's calibrating incline. That's with this model. The other ones are a little bit different. The same thing. You just push and hold stop, remove and replace the safety key. And then you just scroll until it says calibrate incline, then you just push it up and then it calibrates incline. That's it. Okay, so that really kind of concludes the PM. Well, last thing too, also you want to make sure you go to the consoles, push every button, make sure every button works, and the same thing all here. And so after that, that completes the PM. So then we're just picking up. So we're going to put the hood covers back on. Same thing the way we took them off. When we put them back on, I'm going to incline them all the way up. I'm just going to drop them all into place, and then I'll come to the front of them to set them in and then put the screws on. And then it's time to go. The last thing you need to do is, if you're documenting anything bad, you have to make sure that you have a video of it or audio recording or pictures. You just have to prove whatever you're documenting is bad. You have to prove it to the manufacturer. So here we found a bad walking belt on 12, and we also have a bad motor. So the next clip coming up is going to be what I'm going to send to the manufacturer, so that way they see and know the issues that I found, so they can approve it, send me the parts, and then I can repair them. Conroe location, March PM. treadmill 12, bad drive belt. And then we have a bad motor on 7. You can tell whenever they installed it, you can tell it's been dropped, the damage on the flywheel, and you can hear the squeaking from the flywheel. So that motor is bad and damaged. Again, Conroe location, treadmill 7 and 12. Always leave a handwritten note for the club, just so that way they have an understanding of what happened. They just don't like whenever they show up the next day and they don't know what happened. They can't tell if you were here or not. Or it's just good for communicating with them. So I told them there's fresh, clean water in all the rowers. I could not locate where they keep their chlorine tablets, so I left a note for them to please put chlorine tablets into the rowers to prevent the water from going bad. I told them about the bad drive motor on 7, the bad drive belt on 12, and that I fixed the incline sounds on those ones. A little signature there, and then I'll leave that for the head trainer. That way they'll know what happened. And then just clean up all your mess. It's important that that you leave the place cleaner than you found it. Don't leave a mess. Don't leave dust out. Don't leave grease on the floor. So just make sure you clean up after yourself. That way the club doesn't have any reason to complain in the morning when they show up. So now we're going to do a final walkthrough. Make sure everything's good. Make sure you got all your tools picked up. Make sure you don't have any tools left around. If you got dust or dirt or anything or grease or anything on the floor, clean it. If you got water on the floor, mop it. Double check all the treadmills. Make sure they're all good. And now that they're in their final position, we're done moving them, we can check to see that they're leveled and they're not wobbly. So if the treadmill shifts or if the feet are on level, just stomping on each side, it should be good. And if you can feel it wobble when you do that, then adjust the feet. To adjust the feet, you just need a 3/4 inch wrench. And then you just adjust right here. If you do have to adjust it, what I do is I'll show you. Okay, so if you have to adjust the feet, what I'll do is I'll use a weight as like a jack stand, and so I'll just lift up, and then I'll set it on there. Make sure you're sitting on that metal bar and not just on this plastic, because then you're going to crack it. So I'll set it on the metal bar there. So then I'll come down here, and I'll back them out all the way. And typically it shouldn't have been that easy to do by hand. It should have been tightened with the 3/4 inch wrench. So I'll back both of them all the way out. Make sure that the rubber's good on the bottom of them. Okay, now that they're both all the way backed out, they've got these nuts on them, so then I'll make sure that they're all the way tight. I'll get a 3/4 inch wrench, or 2 of them, that way I can make sure these are really tight onto each other. And then I'll put them all the way back in. Now that I know they're tight, and then again with a 3/4 inch wrench, not just hand tight, and I'll put them all the way in. And then that way we know they're both the exact same. And after you've done that, if it's still unlevel, then you'll just see whichever one is lower. You'll bring the bottom one out, and then you'll raise that top nut to the top, so that way it doesn't want to back out. Now, that's, in theory, should keep it in place. However, these feet come out a lot just due to vibration and people running on them. So if it happens more than once that you have to come to adjust the same foot, you'll want to put some Loctite onto the foot, so that way it'll stay in position. And then just make sure you come back with a 3/4 inch wrench and tighten it all the way down, so that way it's in there good. And I mean, you can feel just something about the way Free Motion does these. Like, that's still wobbling in there even though it's threaded. So that's probably why they come out so much, even though you tighten them down. So it's good to have some Loctite to put on there, so that way they don't back out. So once you have them right, if you do it more than once, I'd put Loctite on there just to keep from having to do it again. That's it. So I'm trying to tighten it up as hard as I can with the wrench, just to give it the best chance of not needing me to come back to do it with Loctite, 'cause that requires me going to the store to buy Loctite, and I'm not trying to do that because Free Motion doesn't want to send Loctite for this. However, they don't listen whenever we tell them that tightening it doesn't do the trick. But nonetheless, that's that. So now, hang on. I'm gonna take the weight out from under it, put it back into its position, and then feel, and it is level. But concrete is never level. I mean, as straight as it looks, if you pour water on the floor, it's still gonna puddle in some places. So sometimes just the concrete's not level right where it's at, and it's like in a little low spot. So sometimes, even though they're both straight, the treadmill might be on level because of the way the ground is. So if it was on level, I'd see which one is short, I would just say it's this one, and then I'll loosen it up until it's right, and then I'll tighten up that top nut until it's right, until it's like this. And that's it. All right, another couple things that are on here. Sorry, a lot of this video is going to be out of order, but nonetheless, make sure every treadmill has its own socket. It's a electrical issue. I'm not an electrician, but I guess if they're both plugged in, one will backfeed into the other, causing some electrical issues, and the club will complain of the treadmills shutting off while someone's on there. So just make sure they all have their own outlet. If they don't have their own outlet and then the treadmills keep shutting down, then we'll know it's probably an electrical issue. Typically that'll be a problem at an older location. I think they've got it figured out by now, how to have them set up at the newer locations. Another thing, if you come to the back and then you shake on the board and then there's like a click in or there's play with the board, that means the bushings are most likely missing from the back of the deck bushings. So we'll need to replace those if you're having problems with that. Well, I think if a treadmill is broken in the down position and it's stuck in the down position, most likely it is the lift motor. If a treadmill is stuck in the up position, most likely it's the Olympus board. So if a club calls reporting those kind of issues, those will be probably your first bets on what to bring to replace. If a treadmill, the club calls, complains of a treadmill shutting down on somebody while they're running on it, first bet is most likely the walking belt being damaged. The next bet would be rollers, and then also electrical issues if it's pulling IAMP. It could just be not plugged in all the way, or they could be having other electrical issues like that. But 9 times out of 10, it's this walking belt. Also, when you're doing your PMs, you want to notate for yourself which treadmills have been flipped, have had a belt flipped before, or flipped or changed before. So the best way to tell for that is you'll come to the underside of the treadmill, and then you'll reach in with your hand, and then you'll feel. And once you get to the wax, you can see the wax, the white there. If you feel that roughness, which is the wax, then you know that this deck has not been flipped. So it's still the original belt. So everyone's good for one flip. After that, the next time you have a belt change, you need to change the board altogether and get a whole new board. So it's good to get that information at PM, so if during the next month a belt goes bad or we need to replace it, you can look back to your PM notes and know if you need to bring a board with you or just a belt. Same thing also, at this location they've got belt stops. They don't have belt guides, but at the older locations they'll have belt guides. They'll be metal cylinders. So if they have the really thin, pencil thin ones, those are the old style and they need to be replaced with the new style, thicker diameter belt guides, and they'll need to be moved from the inside hole to the outside hole. Once you look at it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I think that is just about it. Pulse bars will go bad, so if there's buttons that aren't working here, then we just need to replace these pulse bars. That's pretty simple. I'm trying to think if there's any other troubleshooting issues, but I think for the most part that is it. If you'll see, lots of times if the belt is going bad from the underside, you can start seeing like rippling happening on the top side. So if you see that rippling, and then if you feel when you're pushing on the belt that there's an excess amount of friction, then for sure those are bad. Take pictures and videos of everything. That way you can send it in and they can approve it. Whenever you do your notes, include all the part numbers of everything that you're requesting. I think that's all the information that we've got for the PM, so I think that's going to conclude this video. If y'all have any questions, comments, concerns, then just give me a call, email, text, or anything like that, and then I'll help you guys out.